Okay, so welcome back to Nicole. Nicole, how are you doing this lovely, fine British evening?
It is a wet, rainy American afternoon for me. and of course, this past week when things were slow, I had I have a giant, very hefty winter duvet for my bed for those cold winter nights, and I switched it for my super lightweight comforter. I got to have something. I'm one of those people who likes a weight when they sleep,
Yeah.
but to my lightweight comforter, and I switched all my clothes over in the drawers from the super heavy winter clothes to like my spring clothes. And so, of course, the temperature dropped about 15 degrees Fahrenheit this week. So I've been freezing my butt off at night trying to sleep.
Always the way, always the way. I keep hearing about these gravity blankets. They're meant to be like really good. I've never tried them myself, but there's some sort of weighted blankets.
Yeah, weighted blankets. I've made several for Christmas gifts. They are labor intensive, I can tell you that. So if don't complain about how much they cost, because I guarantee you the ones that you can buy commercially are much cheaper than it actually costs to make them if you go out and buy your own fabric and your own filler pellets and all the thread and borders and things you need, not to mention the labor. So,
oh, fair enough. So we won't be expecting in our movie duelist Christmas stocking then.
I mean, the shipping charges alone. Come on.
So, what have you been up to other than obviously changing your bedding? Have you been watching anything interesting?
I've been watching a lot of things. My Herr Manfreund, the man in my life, got me a year's subscription to Shudder for my birthday. So I have been enjoying that thoroughly.
Excellent.
Just finished before this recording watching The Tunnel, which is a Australian found footage movie.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
Or like faux documentary about a news crew going into the tunnels beneath the subway tunnels in Sydney.
Oh.
It was pretty good. Pretty good. I wish I could have made my room a little darker. Some things were difficult to see. I've seen Late Night with the Devil.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you there. What did you think of Late Night with the Devil?
Okay. What did I think of it? I thought it was really good. They absolutely nailed the, not attitude.
Style?
I don't know. Like the way that the host comported themselves in like the late 70s, early 80s really got that. David Dastmalchian got that tone absolutely nailed, as well as the way the studio looked, the way everyone was dressed. I really liked when things went sideways.
Yeah.
I won't go into any more detail than that. But when things go sideways, as inevitably they will, I really liked the look of the big scary thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really inventive.
I just found it a massive shame that you had these sort of, I don't think it's a spoiler, but you had these sort of cuts in between the live sections that were behind the curtain.
Go to commercial.
Yeah, and I thought it would have worked better as just what's the word? A more realistic sort of documentation, I suppose. And I think they had to rely on those bits to sort of fill in some of the blanks, which was a little bit of a shame. And I think they could have got around it a little bit. But it was a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It just maybe didn't live up to expectations.
Yeah. Actually, you know what I watched last night that they have on Shudder? I watched Ghost Watch, the British.
Yes. See, now Ghost Watch. That's how you do it.
It was a TV special, right? And it was like a War of the Worlds kind of thing where some people thought it was real.
It started off, the introduction to it, if I remember rightly, was this is, a drama presentation by Stephen Volk or something like that. But if you didn't hear that at the start, then you're not going to get that, because they actually, if I remember rightly, it was, so they did a section and then they cut and went to the news and then came back to it as if it was a real live show.
Oh, okay. And was that a real TV presenter that was the in-studio host?
Yes, so Michael Parkinson, who was the in-studio host, is basically this well-renowned, well-loved British interviewer.
Oh, okay.
He had a show for years and years and years.
That would explain why he nailed it so perfectly.
Yeah, but I think that, and that's what a lot of people say, is that's what sold this program, and that's why people were like, Michael Parkinson is not going to be involved in something like this if it was just a load of crap.
Right.
So he added this sort of gravitas to the show for starters, and then you had Sarah Green, who's the sort of on-site journalist, I suppose, and Craig Charles, who's obviously best known for Red Dwarf. He was Lister in Red Dwarf.
Oh, okay.
Who was the sort of outside broadcaster on the street kind of thing. But then you also had Sarah Green, who was the main sort of host on the ground. Her husband, Mike Smith, was the guy who was taking the phone calls kind of thing in the studio as well. So it added this sort of fantastic dynamic to it. And I remember watching it on DVD when I bought it about 20 years after, and it still got me. It still got, I mean, that was what, 92, I think. So I would have been 9 when I watched that on Halloween night.
I can imagine that being terrifying at 9.
Yeah, and it lived with me for ages because they never repeated it. There was a big controversy over here about, there was a young lad who had, he wasn't, oh God, I'm desperately trying to think of what the PC term is these days, but, he had...
Not entirely mentally well?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And killed himself, basically, because he thought it was real.
Oh, jeez.
So there was obviously big, massive controversy around it. And it was never shown again until it was released on DVD in about 2003, I think, something like that. But incredible piece of media and just... Yeah, incredible.
The Stone Tape is next on my list for British TV horror things. So
very good, very good. I've heard a lot of good stuff about that. I haven't seen it myself. I mean, I've just got into, recommended by Tarquin, a series called From, which is sort of got a lot of... Jeff Pinkner, I think, is the main guy behind it, who made Fringe and a few other different series and that. But I would thoroughly recommend that. It's one of those series that's best not talked about too much because, it's quite mysterious. Very losty sort of vibes to it as well. Harold Perrineau's one of the main characters in it as well from Lost. And I would thoroughly recommend it. If anybody likes Lost, watch From, because it is incredible.
I liked Lost to a point. And then I came back to it. I'm one of those weirdos who actually likes the ending. But,
I didn't not like it. I think it just could have been. It didn't need the whole... I don't think it needed the whole meeting up in the... wherever they meet up kind of thing. It just... The last series should have just been all on island, and it would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's just me, maybe. But I did manage to finally watch Godzilla -1 this week as well.
Oh, yay! What did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. I wouldn't maybe put it, to that 5-star status that a lot of people have. But I really enjoyed it. I think, for me, what sort of dragged it away from being the 5-star, it was actually the Godzilla bits. I thought they were a bit too OTT, I thought, but it was a damn good film. The whole humanistic story to the film was just fantastic.
Yes.
It was so emotional and just...
yes, absolutely.
And quite, I found it quite original. I'd not seen anything like that in terms of the story that they tell.
Right. Yeah. You don't see a lot of grappling with, both the literal and figurative fallout from, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but also dealing with like a sense of guilt for their part in the utter destruction that happened.
Well, that's it. I thought it was quite fascinating. Obviously, it was a bit of a sort of reset for the Godzilla franchise, I suppose, or the Toho version of the Godzilla franchise, and it does that really well. It's very it takes a lot from the original 1954 Godzilla in a lot of ways, but it just adds the right amount of freshness to it,
right?
And this this whole sort of kamikaze pilot story, really, that is the main drive through the whole thing, is just incredible.
Yeah,
you're just so invested in his story.
Yeah. Definitely. Absolutely recommend watching it. But especially if it comes to like a revival house near you, like a second run cinema, I would make a point of going to see it because it really does add quite a bit having the spectacle blown up to good size for you, you know.
Cool.
But
Cool.
anyway.
But enough about what we've been watching and more about what we've been watching for the podcast. So last time around, you were here with me and we were discussing... What were we discussing last time you were here with me?
Oh, don't have my notepad, Peter. You got to keep a spreadsheet, man.
I have, but it's just like the whole duelist versus duelist thing has just sort of knocked us out of sync, hasn't it, really?
You and I were I think it was more than 5 episodes ago.
No.
Oh, what was it?
Best mindfuck movie.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right.
So last time you were here,
last time I was here, I picked the subject.
You picked the subject, and we were talking best mindfuck movie, Razorhead versus Triangle. So it fell to me this time around to pick the subject for us to duel off, face off against each other with, and I chose best Luc Besson film.
Yep, you did. It was a pretty easy choice for me. It was one of 2.
Mm-hmm.
I actually haven't seen all of his films, but of the ones that are reputed to be his best, I did not go back and watch The Big Blue, which I've heard is quite good also. Also features some of his regular players, but yeah, so...
Yeah. Well, before we get into it, let's delve into a little bit of information about Luc Besson. He was born...
Luc Besson is gross, I found out.
Yes, well, I was going to get to that. He was born Luc Paul Maurice Besson on the 18th of March 1959. He was born in Paris to the parents who both worked as Club Med scuba diving instructors. He actually wanted to become a marine biologist as a child, but an accident at the age of 17 prevented him from being in water. Not quite sure what that is. If he maybe turned into I don't know,
sponge.
Sponge, maybe. Yeah. His first directorial credit was 1981's L'Avant-Dernier, Last But One. 2 of his films have opened the Cannes International Film Festival, The Big Blue in 1998, and one of the films that we're going to discuss shortly, The Fifth Element in 1997. And he's currently directing Dracula, A Love Tale, as his latest project. But yes, we will briefly mention the fact that he's recently, which I didn't realise until we started researching this episode, had a number of allegations, although he's not been...
No, he was acquitted.
He was acquitted. So
yeah, he was acquitted. I mean, I will give him that. I'm full believe women, but he was acquitted in court of law on rape charges that were brought against him. But he is gross because he's had 2 extremely young wives while being at least 20 years older than each of them.
Yes.
So yeah, like his first wife. May Wen he met her when she was 12. They started dating when she was 15.
Oh.
And he was 32 at the time. And they got married when she was 16 and got pregnant. So, and then later on, he divorced her and married Mila Jovovich, who was also somewhere in her very early 20s while he was, pushing 40. At the time. So, yeah, he's gross.
Yeah. Moving on.
But yeah, now I will evaluate him as a filmmaker from here on out. But as a human being, gross.
Gross. Okay, so obviously we talked briefly there about how easy of a choice it was for you. So let's get straight into it. What film did you pick, Nicole?
Well, I mean, it was a relatively easy choice. My second choice that I thought about was La Femme Nikita, and Perriot. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Perriot. I don't know. Who is excellent in that movie, but I wanted something that was a little more emotionally resonant, and so I chose Léon.
Let's talk business. This guy comes to town every Tuesday. Are you free Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm free Tuesday.
You can't stop what you can't see.
This guy came from the outside. He was a pro. He was fast.
In the art of the kill, Leon was the master.
Somebody's coming up. Somebody's serious.
He never missed a hit. He never got caught.
You're indestructible. Bullets slide off you. You played with them.
And above all else, he never had a reason to care. Until now.
I like these calm little moments before the storm.
My family was shot down by DEA officers.
3 kids here. One of them is missing. Find her.
Please open the door. Please.
From the director of La Femme Nikita.
If you don't help me, I'll die tonight. I can feel it.
An innocent girl with no one else to turn to.
What exactly do you do for a living?
Cleaner.
You mean you're a hitman? Cool.
A perfect assassin.
I need you to help me, Leon. I want to get those dirtbags who killed my brother.
With someone to finally believe in.
Change ain't good. Remember that, Leon.
I will.
They're about to come face to face with the cop who's crossed the line.
Bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
1994. It's known mostly as Leon Overseas and The Professional in the US. And now the DVD boxes just have Leon, The Professional, so that nobody gets confused about what movie they're getting. 12-year-old Matilda is reluctantly taken in by Leon, a professional assassin, after her family is murdered. An unusual relationship forms as she becomes his protege and learns the assassin's trade. Directed and written by Luc Besson, starring Jean Reno, Gary Oldman, and Natalie Portman. This is actually Natalie Portman's first film, which is bananas, considering how self-possessed she is. You know, there's here and there you get a little bit of unnaturalness to her performance, but not very often.
No.
And she is remarkable for 12. And I think she was 11 when she started shooting.
I think it works quite well with the film, I think, and the story that you have those sort of moments with her, because I think it's, you know, because the Matilda character's, you know, supposed to be a bit of a dreamer, I suppose, is the impression that I got, and that sort of comes across in this sort of, I suppose it's quite naive at points as a performance.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes. Which, as you said, you know, fits the character. Even though she's had to, in a lot of ways, the character's had to grow up very fast, much beyond her years. And the contrast of the story is that Leon basically stopped growing up at a certain point.
Yes.
And is like emotionally arrested development. And he's not very, I don't think he's terribly emotionally intelligent, although he's very canny when it comes to his quote unquote cleaner work. So, and this was inspired, I guess, by his character in La Femme Nikita, where he plays the cleaner who comes in and cleans up a crime scene after the fact.
Yeah.
So, I absolutely love the performance by Jean Reno in this, and it's so he's so composed when he's doing his work. He's very ritualistic at home. And when he's forced out of his rituals by the arrival of Matilda in his life, he's forced to sort of reassess some things. But, I mean, he's still got some childlike qualities to him. You know, his delight in watching old movies. Like he goes to see it. Now, it's funny, the Blu-ray that I have, I was watching the extended edition, and it has like these notes that pop up that give you extra information. And one of them is actually wrong. It says he's watching Singin' in the Rain, which is not the case. He's watching a movie called It's Always Fair Weather with Gene Kelly on roller skates. And he's just got this delighted, completely unself-conscious expression on his face while he's watching it.
Yeah.
And when he's trying to cheer Matilda up, he uses his pig potholder as like a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
They have a water fight like kids do.
Well, I'm going to stop you there because that pig impression is amazing. His pig voice is incredible. I don't know if it's just the French accent to it.
It could be. So much of French is all in the nose. But
absolutely.
Or getting the pronunciation correct, I should say, is all in where you put it in the nose. But
it's just so it's so charming. So charming. But yeah, I think he, like you say, he's got this sort of mundanity to his life, hasn't he? It's very. It seems, even though we sort of see that, probably only see that cycle once at the start of the film, you get the impression that that's his day-to-day life. He's going to getting his milk,
right, and
he's doing his jobs, and he goes home and he waters his plant and he does his sit-ups, and that's his life.
Right.
I suppose it's a mark of a filmmaker that you can put that. You don't need to see that on repeat, and you don't need to see the cycle. It's very clear that this is his life day to day.
Right. And what an opening job he does, where he's actually not assigned to
incredible
kill his target, but just to deliver a message to his target. Although he's willing to kill all of the goons that get in his way between himself and the target. And it's just like clockwork. He's this able to come in and get past all of the guards and just take them out one by one. And they don't see him until it's too late, if at all. And then even when he gets up on his target, he comes from behind. And I love this shot so much.
Incredible.
So much. Where the guy is just standing up. He's got the phone to his ear, inexplicably calling the police. He's got a ton of drugs and illegal weapons on the premises, but he's calling the police to come help him. And he's backed up to a black hallway, utterly black. And Leon kind of slowly fades in from behind him, and you just see his face and one hand with a knife in it.
I might be wrong here. I know it's on the outgoing. It's definitely this, but you see the knife first, and then the head, then the face.
Yes,
and then the face goes, and then the knife goes, and it's just a proper. But it takes you into that moment, that scene or that shot. It takes you into that moment, and you are there. You are that guy with the knife to his throat. You're just as tense as he is, I think, in that moment. And this is something that we'll talk about on my choice. And I think the feelings that, especially in these two films, that Luc Besson can sort of instill in the viewer are just incredible.
Right. And he's planting the seeds for stuff for later. It's like Leon is excellent at exiting a scene. He's good at finding the way out, is kind of something that's vital to his job and something that he does really well, because when he does fade into the blackness and take the knife away, the target pauses for a second and turns around, and he's just gone, disappeared,
Absolutely.
And he's really good at that. And that comes up later, along with him doing sit-ups in his spare time all the time. And Jean Reno said he was in the best physical shape of his life doing this movie because he had to do the sit-ups on camera constantly. But that sets you up for like the last big showdown, and this trick he does coming down from the ceiling.
But I mean, it's almost like a double header of an opening, though, this film as well, isn't it? Because we get that introduction to Leon, and then you get this other part of the story, which is Matilda and her family.
Right, her horrible father and her horrible half-sister and stepmother and younger brother whom she clearly adores. I mean, this kid the 4-year-old doesn't get any lines at all.
No.
He's completely silent. She delivers like maybe 2 lines to this kid and hugs him once, and yet you get the entire sense of their relationship from just those interactions. She's the one who looks out for him. She's the one who makes sure he's taken care of. She provides the emotional nurturing for her little brother.
Yeah.
And it's just a tremendous job, I think, in both the writing and her performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, her dad is a holder for drug runners. And in this case, it's a couple of corrupt DEA agents.
Mm-hmm.
Norman Stansfield and his cohort Malky, and Norman Stansfield played by Gary Oldman.
Oh, just
Gary Oldmaning all over this movie.
This is it. This is Gary Oldman. I mean, I was watching this last night, and I was messaging movie Julius Vanessa, and she's never seen this, and I said, "You got to watch this just for Gary Oldman's performance. It is his best performance, hands down." And she's better than True Romance. I said, "This just knocks True Romance out of the park," because for me, this is just I can't even think of a word to describe it. But yeah, I'll save my thoughts. I'll let you take the lead on Gary Oldman.
Yeah, there were some wise decisions made in his performance and in the portrayal of him. Like the costume designer dressed him in normal clothes, like as normal and like plain and kind of khaki, not extraordinarily well cut or anything, just to try to like tone him down a little, at least visually.
Yeah.
You know, he's not doing anything weird with his hair. He's not wearing weird colored contacts. You know, he's not doing a lot of the things that he often does with hair or makeup or clothes to exaggerate the character. And he's not real loud, except for one moment near the end. He's unhinged, but quietly. He's calm about it, you know.
And I think, but there's so many good decisions, I think, in the storytelling here that, you know, without even seeing his face, and it's probably a couple of minutes because he walks out of the apartment and he's got his headphones in and he's facing the other way, but you immediately know that this is a man to be afraid of, and it's just so unnerving, that moment, because you know that the guys who are working with him or for him or whatever however it sort of works, are afraid of this guy. You know, you get that feeling immediately.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure some of them are regretting starting to work for him because it's clear that once you start working for him, you don't stop working for him.
But even the choice, you know, this obsession with classical music and particularly sort of Beethoven at the points that they sort of come back and execute Matilda's family, I suppose is the best way to put it.
Yes.
You know, it would be so easy as a filmmaker to overlay that scene with Beethoven.
True.
So easy, but he doesn't. You get all that from Oldman's performance. It's, you know, he's hearing that in his head. Right. We're not hearing it. He's hearing it in his head, and he is just going to town, and you almost can hear it without hearing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a joke, too. He played Beethoven that year in the movie Immortal Beloved.
Right.
So I think it's a bit of an inside joke as well, all the Beethoven references. But yeah, Matilda's dad is holding drugs and cutting them before they go out to the distributors, and Gary Oldman playing, they call him Stan for short, Norman Stansfield. As his partner Malky says, he can sniff out a lie. He's got an uncanny sixth sense for sniffing out a lie. And when the holder, the dad, says, "I don't know why it's not 100% pure anymore. You know, I don't know. I didn't touch it. I didn't do anything to it." And Gary Oldman literally comes up to him and sniffs him. Like he smells him up and down and like holds his head gently, almost tenderly as he's sniffing him. There's a little bit of like sensuality to it almost. And it's terrifying.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, can you think of anything worse than somebody coming up to you and sniffing you that close?
No. I can tell you as a woman type person that that's happened.
Well,
and
really,
it's no
well,
fun. And
no.
it's not as much of a compliment as you think it is. Please don't do that. If you want to compliment someone's perfume, do it from a distance. Don't do it from 2 inches away.
Mm. Dear.
So it's anyway. So he knows. He knows the guy's lying to him, but he says, "I'm going to give you 24 hours. You tell me who's been cutting the drugs when I come back, or before I come back at noon tomorrow. You give me a call. You tell me." And the father doesn't. And fortunately, Matilda's out grocery shopping when Stan and Malky and the goons come back. And Stan, like, first thing he does, busts into the house, does he kill the daughter first or the mother first?
He shoots at the daughter first, but he doesn't kill her.
Yes, I think he shoots at the daughter. She makes it around the corner, and then he busts down the bathroom door where the stepmother is having a bubble bath with her headphones on, which is why she didn't hear them before, and just shotgun blast straight to her chest.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it. There's a camera shot from behind this raised clawfoot bathtub, and you see the hole with both the water and the blood dripping out of it from the back.
Yeah.
And it's a great shot. And then, Stan also kills the daughter and eventually kills the dad. And one of the goons kills the little brother.
Mm-hmm.
And, she gets back from shopping and they're all still there.
Mm-hmm.
So she's, in an incredibly smart move, walks past her own door, doing the New York thing of, I don't see anything. I'm going to mind my own business. Walks past her own door and down to Leon's door at the end of the hall. And she knocks on his door. She's pressing his buzzer. She's knocking on the door and she's just quietly, tearing up and saying, "Please open the door."
Mm-hmm.
And when the door opens, this light falls across her face and it's like salvation.
Yeah.
It's like the light of salvation. So, and there's a little bit of the emotional punch got taken out for me by the little factoids they had, this was the one scene where Natalie wasn't able to do her own crying because her grandparents were visiting the set that day and she was so happy to have them there. That she was having trouble summoning tears, so they blew menthol vapor in her face to make her tear up. Oh. And she's like, that was so unpleasant and so painful that I was like, no, I'll manage it. I'll manage the crying the rest of the time. And she was able to cry on cue every other time after that. God, poor kid. Just, and he takes her in.
Yeah. And we get Piggy.
And she's hell-bent on revenge, and he doesn't want to take revenge. He tells her that it's not worth it. You'll never be the same. After you kill somebody, you're going to be sleeping with one eye open the rest of your life. She's like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. But I think we need to address the elephant in the room of this movie.
Ooh, yes, I think we do.
Which is that Matilda, not unsurprisingly, feels like she falls in love with Leon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm not sure what the correct psychological term is, whether it's transference or what have you. She's never had a reliable male figure in her life.
No.
And the one that was supposed to be reliable, her father, the one fatherly figure in her life was abusive to her. So I think maybe she doesn't want to think of Leon as a father, even though that's sort of a role that he takes. I mean, more mentor, but he's watching out for her. He's taking care of her the way that a father would. And
this is the point where because I watched the version I watched was the extended edition,
right? And it's got the most controversial scene in that. They took it out for the American version.
Yeah. So is that? Which scene is that?
It's the scene where she's in the pink dress, I think, at the end.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it is. I think my opinion is that was the right choice. I don't think the extended version does that, because there are a lot of detractors to this film that would say that, especially now, me and you researching this episode and the history behind sort of Luc Besson maybe would see that as very poor taste, I suppose. But I think the extended version does do the film a little bit of a disservice in that, because it does go that little bit too far, I suppose, in that storyline. I think it could be, to somebody who's not necessarily thinking about the whole of the story and the whole of the arc in this film, it's very easy to dismiss that aspect of the film as being quite sinister, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the thing that saves it from the full out ick is that Leon shuts her down every time.
Absolutely.
Like, she throws herself at him several times over the course of the film.
Absolutely. But then it goes back to what you said, she's very sort of old beyond her years.
She's had to grow up beyond her years.
She's having to be more mature than she is. And he's almost childlike in some ways. Mm-hmm. And you sort of find this balance between two characters, but he, first and foremost, knows that, I never get the sense that he's falling for Matilda or anything like that.
No.
And you don't get the sense that he's, having any impure thoughts or anything like that at all. The most bizarre choice, I suppose, and maybe more retrospectively, is when they're doing the little performances for each other, and she does the Madonna Like a Virgin, is probably the biggest misstep in this film, I would say, because I think that does just push it even further, that sort of thought or that kind of angle that you might try and spin on this film, or some people might try and spin on this film.
Yeah, that part is a little cringy. Apparently Natalie Portman herself picked that.
Right.
Luc Besson apparently was saying, what impressions can you do? And she was like, I can do Madonna, I can do Charlie Chaplin, I can do Marilyn Monroe. And she says later that she had, especially doing the Marilyn Monroe, she had no concept of the sexual undertones of doing Happy Birthday, Mr. President in that breathy way that Marilyn did.
And to be fair, that probably is the more troublesome part of that scene, I suppose, is because you almost get the impression of that Leon is maybe a bit, I don't want to say aroused because that's probably the wrong word, but his reaction is maybe a little bit like, I shouldn't be feeling a certain way.
I don't know. I felt like he was like, oh, this is probably not okay. What's going on here? I am uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's maybe the right reading of it. Yeah,
I am uncomfortable. And he shuts her down 100% every time. There's never any hint. He never goes part way where he's like, "Oh, you're too young. Maybe one day."
Yeah.
When you're older,
Yeah.
Never. He's like, nope, nope.
Mm-hmm. And he, and there's certain points through the film where, he reacts in the right way to her physical touch, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. Suppose when she touches his hand or whatever, he's like, no, this isn't right.
Yeah, he discourages it for the most part. There's like some protective times when he'll wrap her into his arms, but that's literally protect her from physical harm at the time, which again, in much more of a fatherly or mentoring kind of way. It's not inappropriate.
But I think he's so intelligent and forthright in that he knows how she feels about him, and he knows that he has to be careful of how he reacts to her, which does very much come across, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a challenge. She's a very extroverted character.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so he starts training her.
Yeah, these fantastic training scenes. She literally takes out some kind of almost Donald Trump-esque character, I suppose.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering.
Getting the impression he's meant to be some kind of politician.
Except that I'm betting Donald Trump never jogged a day in his life.
No, probably
but
not. And he's more orange than this guy in his orange shell suit.
it is a very similar character. But yeah, it's this dude with a bunch of bodyguards and a yellow and orange tracksuit. And those were very popular at the time, especially among the wealthy, which is weird because they're so tacky. But he takes her up to a rooftop and he gets a sniper rifle from his handler. The guy that doles out the jobs. And his handler's like, I was surprised when you asked for this. This is, for beginners. And he's like, keep in shape.
Yeah.
So,
but you don't know at that moment, do you? You just think that he's actually going to get her to shoot somebody. You don't think, oh, it's a paint gun or whatever. And I think this is something we'll probably get, more into in my choice. But I think it's that style of sort of humor with Luc Besson that works really well in his films, and certainly the ones that I've seen.
He likes to pull the rug out from under you.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does it twice in this film.
It's a real rifle, but it's a paint pellet. Yeah. And yeah, he does pull the same gag twice, and you don't think he's going to do it again because she's got a different gun this time.
Yeah. And also in that second scene, I was quite struggling with this because I knew it was the extended version I was watching. Because it's a while since I've watched this film as well, but I was thinking, what's actually extra in this film? And because I couldn't remember this scene. So the scene where he takes the first client, is that in the original?
I don't know.
Where they cut the bolt?
I think so. I think they're. I'm sorry. I should have watched the theatrical as well to make sure I was clear on the differences.
Well, I watched the extended anyway.
I watched the extended because I figured that you would have more access to the extended version because it's like the international version and the American version's the shorter one.
Yeah.
So
I remembered quite a little about the middle of this film, so that was where it was sort of quite ropey for me. But even if it is the extended version, it did present something which was an X-Files connection. So Robert Lasardo, who plays client number one, who's whether it's the extended version or not, is the chappie that Matilda shoots with the pellet gun twice. Who was actually in a season 7 episode called "The Amazing Mellini," about a magician whose head falls off, basically. He played a gangster called Sissy Alvarez.
Was this TNG? Oh, no, I'm thinking Star Trek for some reason.
Star Trek?
I don't know why. Sorry.
How long have you been doing this podcast?
I think you said Robert Lasardo and my brain went Robert Picardo and jumped to Star Trek somehow. But yeah, X-Files, right. Season 7 of the X-Files. That other show.
Yes. Incredible episode from season 7. One of the better ones from the back end of the X-Files canon. I would thoroughly recommend it.
Yeah, there are fewer great ones toward the end.
Oh, no, so we could. It included Ricky Jay, I believe. Who's obviously a famous magician. He plays...
but also an actor. He was in a lot of movies.
He was. He was in Tomorrow Never Dies with James Bond. And multiple different things. But yeah, I would thoroughly recommend it if you're not delved into the latest season of the X-Files. The Amazing Mellini, incredible episode. There's another magician in it as well. I can't remember his name, though. You might be more familiar with him because he's more of a stateside magician. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But yeah, there we go.
All right. Yeah. And Matilda shoots him twice with the pellet gun, and Leon says, no, you got to do, second shot's got to be higher. You want to aim for the heart or the lungs, never the face.
No.
So if the client can't identify them, you can't get paid. So, and then he just like casually shoots him with his gun as he's turning her to look at some other things in the apartment. He's just like almost absentmindedly turning back around and shooting the target so that he actually dies. So, but Matilda turns, and the guy is a drug dealer, or at least part of the chain of distribution, and she sets the drugs on fire.
No women, no kids.
And Leon says, why? And she's like, you said no women, no kids.
Yep.
Who do you think this stuff's going to? And I'm like, bravo. You're going to burn the apartment building down, but bravo.
Excellent.
So it's an interesting relationship. She talks him into showing her just the theory, she says.
Yeah.
He doesn't let her do the actual killing of the clients. He'll let her help.
Yeah.
There's in that whole montage of she rings somebody's doorbell, and Leon's waiting just out of sight with his bolt cutters. She tricks them into opening the door just that little bit, and he busts in, cuts the chain, kills the client, just over and over and over again. She's an accomplice to quite a few killings, and then she decides that she's learned enough and goes to kill Stan, goes to Stansfield in the federal building and gets around the metal detector by pretending she's making a food delivery and scooting the food bags around the outside of the metal detector.
Another incredible scene, though. That moment that the door to the restroom closes.
Right, yeah. She follows Stansfield into the men's room. She sees him going alone. And she follows him in, and there's nobody there. And there's one stall door closed all the way down the end. So she goes all the way down the end to investigate the stall door, and then the door to the restroom closes, and Stan is behind it. So he knew he was being followed. And she is so intimidated and frightened of him that she doesn't take any of the guns out. She doesn't try to shoot him. She does stand her ground. She doesn't scream or run. But he's just like, okay, this must be personal, for someone this young to want me dead.
Yeah.
And takes her up to his office, and fortunately she left a note for Leon saying where she was going. And she had taught him to read well enough, because he had not known how to read. This was the thing, He tells her in a story later that he was from a not well-to-do family. Yeah. And not respectable family. And it turns, his father was a hitman, it turns out, as well. Yeah. So he didn't learn how to read properly. Yeah. And so she's been teaching him. And she left a note saying, she's going to go take care of Stansfield. And he's like, fuck. And he has to go get her.
Well, it does. I mean, that's what leads us to this sort of epic finale. I think it's just such a great last act of this film.
Yeah.
Because there are parts of the middle of the film that drag for me a little bit. But once you get to that part where she's, gone off to Stansfield and it's all sort of gone a bit tits up, everything from there is just, the end of this film is just incredible. So incredible.
Right. Yeah, he takes her back to the hotel that they're staying in at the time, and Stansfield goes to see Tony and says, hey, I think this is connected to this other thing that happened in Chinatown where his partner Melky got killed by this guy. And that's where Leon made his mistake, is he let it get personal, and he went to do what Matilda wanted, and he took out one of the people who was involved in killing her whole family.
Yep.
And so, I mean, does Tony give him up? I'm not 100% sure on that.
I think he does. I think, as we'll sort of, well, we can probably talk about it now, and then we'll save the rest of the finale. But Danny Aiello's performance in this film, I think, is quite underlooked, I suppose, because he's only sort of plonked in here and there, but you get the impression, or we don't get the impression, you know that he's, taking Leon for a fool, and he gives this speech about, old Tony, look after your money, and it's better than a bank because banks get done over. And he gives exactly the same speech later on to Matilda, because obviously Leon said, if anything happens to me, I want Matilda to have my money.
Right.
And he has to give the same speech because, the likelihood is either all of that money is nowhere to be seen, or he has none of that money because he just takes it for himself.
Taking advantage of Leon's naivete.
Exactly. And by the time, he gives that speech to Matilda, he's black and blue because he's had the shit kicked out of him by Stansfield and his men. And it just holds no weight whatsoever because you just think, well, you're fucking full of shit, you are.
Yeah.
I'm sure Daniela probably didn't do more than a couple of days' work on this film, but it's quite an impactful performance, I think, for the whole, the whole arc of the story.
Yeah. He always did tremendous supporting work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even Jacob's Ladder was just incredible, incredible performance. He's always been one of those sort of incredible sort of a bit like Brad Dourif, aside from the Chucky films. He's always been that sort of incredible little performances in films.
Yep. Just adds just the right sauce to everything. Enhances the flavor of the entire dish just by being there.
Absolutely. But yeah, so then, let's get into this finale because I just fucking love this end of this film.
Yeah, it's, oh God, make sure I've got all the notes for this one. So, they have like one squad of goons to go to get Leon, and he takes them out super easy. And then, so they're like, all right, let's get some more police. They get a few more guys in there. Some of them very smartly staying around the corner. And takes out a few more. And they just keep getting whittled down bit by bit to the point where you almost think that Leon and Matilda are going to be able to just go out straight past them. Because there are so few. But then Stansfield calls for backup in the most Oldman way possible.
Oh, yes. I would do it, but I don't think I could do it justice.
No, I'm not sure I could either. I think I'd alarm my neighbors.
Well, I'm sort of the back end of my row of houses, so I could probably give it a go. But
yeah, he says, bring me everyone. And the guy goes, what do you mean, everyone?
Everyone.
Betty, bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Just top volume.
But it's fucking incredible. And an ad-lib from Mr. Oldman as well, from what I've seen. I saw an interview with him a while back and saying they were just delivering the line, bring me everyone. I mean everyone. And, he said, let me just go for it. And he goes for it, and it's just incredible.
And then you see like 3 SWAT trucks arriving.
It just fits the film. And it fits the Stansfield character so well.
Right.
And it is probably one of the best delivered moments in cinema, I think.
Yeah.
Because you don't see it.
It's a great big moment.
Yeah, you don't expect it at all, but it's just there and it's incredible.
Because the rest of the performance, he's been, like I said, unhinged, but quietly. For the most part, been unhinged, and he just really lets the roar out for everyone. All his frustration and anger and everything. And they're in the showdown in the hallway. It is the ceiling part before or after he sends Matilda downstairs. I think it's after. No, it's before. Doesn't matter. At some point, he sends Matilda downstairs. He shoots out the wall all around the kitchen fan so that they can get at the duct. And Matilda It's like, I barely fit in here. How are you going to get out? And he's like, I will. I'll meet you at Tony's. I will. You go. I'll meet you there. I'll be there in an hour. And she doesn't, rightly doesn't believe him.
Yeah.
And is sure she's never going to see him again and doesn't want to let go. And somehow he convinces her, he's like, I'm going to have a better shot of getting out of here by myself than with you along. And that's what finally convinces her, because that's true enough. Still doesn't have much of a shot, but he's got a better shot. And, guys are trying to break into his place, and he opens the door, and he's above the door. So he's like shooting people from behind as they come in, because he's like, he's wedged himself, got his arms and legs spread to brace himself in the corridors. In New York apartments, the hallways are narrow enough that you can do that, definitely, especially the older ones. But he does this great move where he opens the door, swings down, upside down, shoots like 3 guys, pulls himself back up, swings himself back up like a gymnast, and shuts the door again. Mm-hmm. And that's the move that they've been prepping you for. Yeah. With this whole movie of him doing sit-ups in all his spare time. Yeah. Is that, he's got the core strength to do that. He can swing down and then just with his abdominal muscles and back muscles swing himself back up out of the way and shut the door again.
Incredible.
I wonder if Besson, I don't really wonder if Besson stole this from Silence of the Lambs, I'm sure. Leon gets out of the apartment by disguising himself as an injured policeman. He puts on the riot gear and the gas mask and lays on the floor and waves an arm weakly. And they pull him out of the apartment and bring him partly downstairs. And he's like, let me keep the gas mask. I breathe better with it on. Musters an American accent for a little while.
The John Wayne.
It's not the
John
best,
Wayne accent.
Yeah. And he manages to sneak past everyone. They're all just like, go outside to the, the paramedics or whatever. And he goes down to the bottom level and goes out through an outdoor walkway, or is heading out the walkway toward the outside. And unfortunately, Stansfield is just canny enough to think that that's where he might be, because they're not finding him in the apartment. No. And they're not finding him in the building. And it's like he couldn't have gotten past everybody outside. And goes and looks. And, I think it's a good bit of filmmaking here that they don't put the gunshot sound in. And it's just...
Yeah, you get the physical reaction,
Yeah, you're cutting back and forth from Leon's face, looking hopeful, coming toward the light and looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And he almost makes it, and then you just see his perspective falling sideways. Yeah. And then you get a cutaway, and Stansfield shot him in the back, or the back of the head, possibly even. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Stansfield goes to gloat.
Yeah.
And Leon presses something into his hand. It says, "This is from Matilda." And it's the ring trick that he showed Matilda earlier.
The ring trick. Absolutely.
Give them the ring pin from one of his grenades. And Stansfield opens the coat, and there's 8 of them. He's like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And blows up. And so Matilda's on her own.
Yeah.
And Tony refuses to give her jobs. He refuses to give her more than $100.
Because he doesn't have it. I'm telling you, he doesn't have it.
No. God knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that Leon has made over the years that Tony has pocketed.
Well, he says, what, 5,000 per hit?
Per hit. And he's doing hits I don't know, at least twice a week, say. Mm-hmm. So making $10,000 a week, you're doing well for yourself. And he's been doing this for 20 years almost, or 20 years more than that at this point. So quite a bit of money that he hasn't touched. And So Matilda's like, well, I've got nowhere else to go. She's got a gun, but she's like, where do I go? And so she goes back to the school she's been skipping. You know, her dad had prepaid for private school for troubled girls or troubled youth out on Roosevelt Island. And she takes the tram out there. I don't know if that's still running. I'll have to look that up. But she takes a tram out to Roosevelt Island and goes to the school and plants Leon's plant that he's been taking meticulous care of this whole movie, carrying from hotel to hotel.
Right. I need to step in here.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm not going to profess that I'm a plant expert by any stretch, even though I manage a garden centre. It's still not my forte, but that is a house plant. She's planting it in the ground. It's going to die very quickly.
Oh, yeah, it's going to die in like a week. She plants it under a tree. It's not going to get any sun at all. Also, it's not going to get enough nutrients.
No, not. I mean, this is set in New York.
Yeah.
Similar climate to here, really. Mm-hmm. It's not going to survive outside at all. No.
But she doesn't know that.
No.
You know, she does it with hope. She says, you know, I think we'll be okay here, Leon. So... And that's that. And they didn't make a sequel because when Luc Besson left the studio, they didn't want to give him the rights back to the story. So the script that he had, he rewrote, and they used it as the basis for Colombiana with Zoe Saldana. So.
Oh, well, I think it's one of those things. It might have been an interesting story, but I think if it's not got Leon, then it's not really that interesting.
Yeah, it's funny for such a, you know, an introverted, quiet character who's, you know, emotionally underdeveloped. He's got this tremendous charm.
Absolutely.
And I think it's all down to Jean Reno. You know, the man's got charisma out the ears to start with. And he's got
range. I think range is the right word for Jean Reno. He's got such a good range.
Yes.
He's played every kind of archetype in cinema under the sun, I think, really.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I can't remember which. He was in one of the Mission Impossible movies.
He's in the first one, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But he's just he makes it look so easy. He makes it look effortless.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's what you want in a character actor. Especially if you're giving one a lead, you want somebody who's going to make it look like he's not trying hard.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, it's probably the best time to say it's time for a short break, and we'll be back with my choice then, Nicole.
All right.
So, welcome to the intermission. This is the part of the episode in which I ask my co-host a random question, a question that they've not prepared for, and get their honest first answer. So, Nicole, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. So this is maybe more pertinent of a question once we've discussed my choice, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. If an alien race landed on Earth and you had to show them one film to prove that the human race is worth saving, what would it be?
Would it have to be live action? To prove they're like real people?
Be anything.
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like it would need to be...
I thought this would be easy for you. I thought of an immediate one that you would go to.
I watch so...
To prove that everything about us is good and worth saying.
Maybe one of the Captain American movies? He's what we wish we were.
That's very Stars and Stripes of you, that is.
I feel like that's who we wish we were. I don't know. I feel like it would need to be a documentary of somebody selfless and inspirational. The Mr. Rogers documentary.
Okay.
Won't You Be My Neighbor? That is what I would show aliens, to show that there is good in the world and people are worth saving.
Right. So you wouldn't show them It's a Wonderful Life?
No.
No. Okay.
No, because then you've got old Mr. Potter being evil and greedy and horrible.
Well, yeah, but then the vast majority of the people in Angel Falls, I want to say.
I mean, they pull together at the end.
Exactly.
But if I want to prove, genuine people can genuinely be kind and giving and thoughtful and nurturing, and lift each other up, then I can't think of a better example than Mr. Rogers. So.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I would, I'd go down that route of, people are not infallible and, but in the end, we kind of get there. I mean, my choice, I would say, is Little Miss Sunshine.
I've actually never seen that.
You've never seen Little Miss Sunshine?
Mm-mm.
But I think it's just such a great little film about just working through adversity and working through your own sort of family dynamic and realizing.
I don't know why I haven't. I love Alan Arkin.
Realizing, it's brilliant. It's one of my favorite films. I absolutely love Little Miss Sunshine. It's just incredible. But it's just so uplifting at the end because, these people are all totally fallible people, but in the end, they just come together in the most brilliant way. And that needs to be some homework for you, Nicole. You need to watch Little Miss Sunshine. Absolutely.
I think that's why I haven't seen it, because at this point, it's been so long that it feels like homework to catch up on that I need to do. And something in my brain, I don't know if it's like oppositional defiant disorder or what, it's just like, oh, you're going to tell me to do that? No, I don't want to do it now. I was going to do it, but now I'm not, because you told me I had to.
It's been built up now, yeah. Fair enough. Okay, well, let's call that the end of the intermission and we'll head back to the main episode. Thank you, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, yeah, this was almost kind of a tough choice for me, this one. Because there's two, and you pick one of them. And I would put your choice and my choice at the same level, to be fair. So I think this is even quite a difficult choice for me.
Well, they're two very different tones of film.
Incredibly different, yeah. But yeah, it was either Leon or it was my choice, which is The Fifth Element from 1997.
Every 5,000 years.
Remove the shield.
When the three planets are in eclipse, the black hole like a door is open. Evil comes, spreading terror and chaos.
There's nothing that can stop this.
There is only one thing.
Perfect.
The Mondachiwan have in their possession the only weapon to defeat evil. 4 elements. Gathered around a fifth.
They're here.
Hello.
Corbin, sweetheart. You got broken fingers, you can't punch my number?
Hi, Mom.
Welcome on. Have a nice day.
Major Dallas, you're selected for a mission of the utmost importance.
What mission?
Save the world.
Is that thing solid?
Unbreakable.
Good. Where are the stones?
I don't know. And even if I did know, I wouldn't tell somebody like you.
There's nowhere else to go.
In God's name, we do such a thing.
Hang on.
Obviously directed by Luc Besson, written by Luc Besson and Robert Mark Kamen of Karate Kid fame, no less, which I didn't realise until this research in this episode, and obviously recently discussed Karate Kid with Jamie. So it was quite a surprise to see his name pop up in the credits. Starring Bruce Willis, Mila Jovovich, Gary Oldman, Ian Holm, and Chris Tucker, amongst many others. So the story of The Fifth Element is, in the 23rd century, the survival of the planet Earth becomes the responsibility of Corbin Dallas, a taxi cab driver, former Special Forces major, after a young woman falls into his cab. To accomplish this, Dallas must join forces to recover the 4 mystical stones essential for the defense of Earth against the impending attack of a malevolent cosmic entity. That was a lot more of a mouthful than I expected. That synopsis.
And malevolent cosmic entity is so much more poetic way than they actually put it in the film, which is like a giant ball of pure evil.
Well, I'll touch on that. So my son started writing this as a teenager. He envisaged this world of the Fifth Element to basically alleviate his boredom, as he puts it. Began writing the script when he was 16. Originally started it as a novel, basically. But then eventually, after 20 odd years, production began in early August 1995, and Besson travelled to various places for casting, including Paris, London, and Rome. And the cast actually talk about this film being one of their most positive movie-making experiences ever. A lot of people have gone on record saying that they really enjoyed making this film, and it was very smooth to make. And, you sort of touched on there, this thing being this sort of ball of evil, and quite simply put. And I think this is a very simple story. It's got a lot of it's got a lot of foibles to it, I suppose is the right word, but essentially it's an incredibly simple story, and I think that's probably one of the reasons I really like it.
Now see, that's one of the reasons why it kind of dropped down a notch on my list, is because it's one of those movies I have to be in the right mood for, because it is so simple and a little bit silly in places that it almost feels like a children's movie.
Yeah.
In some places.
Absolutely. I think there's parts where it sort of falls flat of that. I think there's some very adult...
I mean, there's nothing wrong with children's movies.
No.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
But then there's some very odd sort of choices in this film, which we'll probably get to, that maybe steer it a little away from being a children's film. Which, I'll admit I don't really get the odd choices in the film. But to me, and even watching it now, this film looks incredible.
Yeah.
There's one or two CGI pieces, maybe the sort of reformation of the Supreme Being in the chamber that looks a little bit dodgy, but
it's a little bit hollow, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but some of the rest of the CGI, I think, looks incredible. For 1997, I mean, this was just... you look at other 1997 films, things like Spawn and
I saw that in the theater. Oof.
Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and even some of the bigger films like The Relic, which is a personal favourite of mine. They've aged terribly, but the vast majority of this film just looks so good.
Oh yeah, and it's so eye-poppingly colorful.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, for God's sake, you've got Jean-Paul Gaultier designing the costumes.
Yeah. And apparently all of them, apparently he did more than 1,000 designs and was making sure the extras were dressed correctly.
Yeah, it just looks, every single person in this film looks incredible.
Right.
I mean, even one of my personal favorite scenes that tickles me every damn time, even the guy with the fucking hallway.
I love the hallway hat guy.
Picture on his hat, the hallway hat. It's incredible. It's an incredibly funny moment, and it's just Like, how does anybody come up with that?
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And it tickles me every damn time. Just this guy trying to rob Corbin Dallas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's doing such a good job of just, it's clear he's tweaking out on something when he's trying to rob Corbin. But just the hat that it's a photo of the hallway, and then he tips his head up so he can see. He's like, you like my hat?
Give me the cash. Come on, man, give me the cash.
Give me the cash.
But yeah, like I say, it blew me away. Actually, I mean, it's been a couple of years since I last rewatched this film, but even that opening, with in the desert, 1914, the moment that the Mondoshuan ship comes down just looks so vivid,
mm-hmm.
And they're sort of. Even I suppose it's some kind of animatronic. Well, I think it was actually people in suits playing the Mondoshuans in that opening.
I kind of think that was a mistake, actually.
Think?
That's something that I mean, it's a cool design. I will give you that. It's a cool design, but I wish they had done it maybe with some kind of puppetry because they could have made it more articulated. But it makes no sense to me to have like space armor or whatever that's so limiting of your movement. It just seems like far too much. They're so stiff and so hard to move. It's like, yes, they look great, but it in no way seems conducive to walking, much less, piloting a spaceship of some kind. I'm sure there's some, advanced technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but
that's fair enough. I mean, there's obviously some clear inspirations here, with some of maybe the story and some of the creature design as well. There's almost a sort of Dune.
Yeah, it's probably backstory
influencer there, and a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as well. I think there's quite a influence there. I think certainly in the humor of this film.
Yes,
and that's the other thing. We touched on it with Leon, but I think it's that much more. In this film, it's very much a sort of action adventure comedy.
Yes.
And for me, it works really well. I think the humor's quite. There's a couple of points where it's maybe a little bit too OTT, and some of the people can't maybe pull it off. Ian Holm, I think, doing the.
I think he struggles a little bit with some of the more slapsticky bits.
Struggled a little bit there, but then the rest of it, especially with the Ian Holm character, it works really well, and his awkwardness, I think, comes across quite incredibly in this film because you don't see, you never saw Ian Holm in a great deal of comedic performances, from what I remember. I mean, Bilbo maybe a touch, but it was the right kind of humor for Ian Holm, and I think the vast majority of this performance it sort of suits his comedic style. But even in the opening, with the guys and the Aziz Light,
yes,
it just hits so well. That
Luke Perry checking it off on his.
Yeah, sideshow Luke Perry.
Yes,
a little cameo in this. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
And I never realised actually his son is a professional wrestler, Jack Perry.
Huh.
Didn't realise that until last week.
Learn something new every day.
You do, certainly do. But yeah, I like to say this is just. I think the core performances are really strong in this film as well. Bruce Willis is very Bruce Willis, but it's Bruce Willis, one of his best. I think he can be quite a good comedic performer. I think Bruce Willis. And again, the tone is quite, it's almost very sort of Demolition Man, Last Action Hero. It's very knowing of Bruce Willis's action roots, and it plays up to that quite well.
Yeah, he is quite reined in for a lot of the movie, and I think that works because everyone else is so over the top that you need to have, at least relatively, you need to have the straight man in there somewhere for people to play off of. But I think he's I think he's quite good in this. He doesn't look miserable, which, to me, he looks miserable in about half of his movies, which is a shame. I wish he hadn't done so many that he didn't seem to be enjoying.
Absolutely. And you've got the yin to his yang in Mr. Gary Oldman again. And completely, opposite to his Stansfield. He's got this very over-the-top sort of Texan, I suppose. Is he meant to be Texan? Is that his accent?
It could well be. I think he's going for, Texas oil baron kind of sound, perhaps.
Yeah.
Definitely Southern. It's got the fake buck teeth in the front.
Yeah. An incredible look. Again, Jean-Paul Gaultier, I think, is probably one of the highlights of this film. It's just this incredible look.
Oh, it is and it's not. See, this is why, it's like little like tenths of points here, there, and everywhere is what brings this movie down for me, because it is a lot of fun. In so many ways, this movie is a great deal of fun.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just, yes, having Jean-Paul Gaultier do all the costumes really gives it like a unifying aspect to it. The fashion is all from the same era, clearly. Like how fashion changes, like in the 1980s, neon colors were a huge deal, and like oversized shirts, and seeing it everywhere tells you that like you're in a certain period of history and everybody's wearing similar kinds of things because that's what's available to buy. And like this is having Jean-Paul Gaultier do it, everything's got kind of a similar, like a plasticky or rubbery look to it for the most part. It's very strange color choices. Like Gary Oldman's wearing this like iridescent, like yellowy blue jacket number, and the thing on his head where his head's like half shaved and half floppy on the other side.
But then I think it kind of works because you've got Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, as he's epically called in this film. He's this sort of underling to the real big bad of this film, which is this ultimate evil, which is simply just a force that destroys.
Yeah, it's like a sphere, black sun kind of.
A very simple concept, and I think you need that sort of. He's this sort of. I can't think of the character's name. Salem's Lot. Got Mr. Barlow, and then you've got James Mason.
Oh yeah, the Renfield character.
Yeah, he's very much this sort of on Earth sort of associate.
Yeah, you need a representative to take care of business and walk around in the daytime, so to speak.
So I think it doesn't need to be that sort of sinister Gary Oldman that he can quite easily pull off. It needs to be this over the top, looking out for himself kind of character that I think makes it work. For me, it works as this sort of over the top character, because I think that ultimate evil is quite a effective entity. I think you get that, early on in the film, you get this sort of interaction with it where it takes, however many starships that are trying to nuke it into oblivion. That sort of sets the scene that this thing will not be stopped. The only thing that will stop this thing is the fifth element and the supreme being that will put it at bay. Which is probably the perfect opportunity to talk about our fifth element, really. Lilu. Incredible performance by Mila
I always say Jovovich.
Jovovich.
Yeah, she's great. I hate the hair.
Career-making performance. You hate the hair? Is it because it looks a bit smelly?
I hate the hair. She's supposed to be the supreme being, like a perfect being. And they did this, they super bleached out her hair and dyed it like clown orange and left it ropey, like it hasn't been washed in a week.
No.
And it's like, that's not a supreme, that's not supreme hair. That's
Well, it's the hair's not the be all end all.
No,
Nicole,
but like they damaged her hair so much that she had to wear a wig for half the movie because it fell out.
Oh, yeah.
That to me, I mean, honestly, even the first time I saw the movie in the theater, I'm like, oh my God, that hair is hideous. No, she's not a supreme being. No, they've made a mistake here. This is terrible.
But I do love how they get to this scene where they're sort of reconstructing her body, and the assumption is that it's a man.
Right.
I love that moment, and then it's like, it's this incredible looking woman. She just does have this incredible look,
Right.
You can't take your eyes off her, I think that goes for any performance that she's had since. She's such a stunning looking woman.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in any kind of misogynist sense.
No, I would agree. I mean, she's got beautiful skin. She's got these big eyes,
Yeah. I mean, what's the female version of an Adonis, I suppose, is
Aphrodite?
Almost the Aphrodite, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But you get this very nuanced sort of childlike performance from her, and it's just so endearing, I think. You go on this journey with the Lilu character that although she's meant to be this supreme being and all-knowing and everything else, she's learning about humans, she's learning about the world and Earth and everything else. There's parts of it where it's just too much for her. There's bits that she doesn't fully understand. And you go on that journey with her, almost like the experience that you have as a human being is that, as you get older and you learn about things and you learn about the horrible things in the world, you learn about war, you learn about suffering, and you learn about death and everything else. And you go on that journey with Lilu, I think, in this film. And I think Mila Jovovich's performance really puts that across really well, I think.
Yes. Yeah. It's I want to just wholeheartedly embrace this movie, and I just can't because I'm picky. But it's just, she's a clone, right? Like she's been rebuilt from one cell.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And like 3D printed, basically.
I think it's more than one cell. There's mostly more than one cell in a hand, surely.
Right. But it's, there's no brain tissue in that hand. So they're rebuilding everything, and somehow she's comes into being with all the memories that she needs and the ability to speak already and move properly. She's never used these muscles before, and yet she's able to be agile and strong. And so, I mean, it's just, I know. I'm quibbling about it's a fairy tale, and I'm quibbling about talking bears, but it's just it's a fantasy story. It's a fantasy sci-fi story. But for me, my personal taste, so I like my science fiction to have more science in it.
Okay.
So, or at least be slightly more scientifically accurate.
But I think, the last sort of cast member that I want to maybe talk about at length, maybe not too lengthy, but it's actually something I've changed my opinion on with this film. Chris Tucker as Ruby Rod.
Yeah.
I used to hate this part of the film when I first watched it. I mean, I would have been 14 when I first watched this film when it first came out.
But it gets better every time, doesn't it?
It's just incredible because it is, what's intrinsically just an annoying character is, he's meant to be annoying. That's the whole point of his character. And I think once you realize that you embrace the Ruby Rod character, he's sort of this sort of merged character of Michael Jackson and Prince, I think was what they were going for, which kind of makes sense in some way, but it's just so, well, it's just so over the top, but it just fits in this film like an epic puzzle piece. It's just so right for being this sort of comedy sidekick for the last half of the film.
Yeah.
And Chris Tucker just nails it completely. You know, he's got this sort of...
Yeah. And he was so young, too.
Yeah. You know, this is definitely the first time. I mean, what was it? A year before Rush Hour, I think? 98, I think Rush Hour was. Again, in another star-making performance, really.
Like, he hit with Friday, I think, in 1995.
Yeah, yeah.
But this was a huge role for him, even though he doesn't come in until like much farther into the movie than I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. He's got like that. I think he's taken the voice of Michael Jackson, but the sexuality of Prince for this character. He's named Ruby Rod. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most phallic name ever, perhaps.
What I touched on at the start, you know, this probably takes the family out of the family movie, really. This character at points.
Yeah, there's a lot of things intimated.
Yeah, there's this sort of weird point where there's the takeoff of this ship where I guess it's meant to suggest that he's having oral sex with one of the stewardesses.
Yes. Yeah. I love the bit where she's like, Mr. Rod. And he pops up and he's, you can call me Ruby.
It does seem like an odd choice. But then, you know, Luc Besson's French. So, you know.
I think they had to give that to him as a character choice to be that sexual, especially that like aggressively heterosexual, because he was a little afraid of it. He was a little afraid of like the flamboyance of it. He was a little afraid of the costumes. Apparently Gautier gave him stuff that was like way more feminine to choose from, and then he'd give him like a bunch of super, super feminine options, and then the one that he actually wanted him to wear for a particular scene, and it was the most toned down of all of them, and so that's the one he'd pick.
Right.
And that's how they got him to wear the costumes that they wanted to, and I think especially the one, the black velvet with the roses on it. But yeah, I think that's why. I think he was a little worried about how feminine he was going to look on camera. And so he was just like, I don't know, man. Instead of like, okay, well, here's your costumes. You can have this, this super frilly thing, or you can have this leopard print bodysuit. And so he's like, okay.
Right. I see. That kind of makes sense.
But I like it.
It's the, 24th century? Yeah.
I like it. I think it's appropriately over the top. I don't mind the sexuality of it. I think it's just implied enough. It's just not explicit enough to take the kids away into the other room. Yeah. They might ask, what's going on? And you're like, oh, I don't know. You know, so they're playing a game. I don't know. They're wrestling.
Yeah. So I'm going to just very quickly sort of spitball through the rest of the cast.
Okay,
just to give a couple of sentences here. So Brian James, who plays General Monroe. I love a bit of Brian James, Blade Runner, everything else. But again, you know, he hits the comedic beats, I think. Tiny Lister, who plays President Lindbergh.
Oh, I love Tiny Lister.
Gotta love him. I love him in everything that he's in, even if it's only like 5 minutes. But he's incredible in this because he just plays a politician so well, absolutely brilliantly. Lee Evans, you know, shout out to Lee Evans who plays Fogg, who's the sort of lead steward on the Boston Paradise ship. I think one of his early sort of Hollywood roles. Charlie Creed Miles, who plays David, who's the assistant of Ian Holmes' character.
Oh, yeah.
He would go on to play a lot of sort of hard men, really, and gangstery types. But I think he plays a buffoon quite well in this.
Yeah. Yeah, he's so good at being the acolyte or whatever, you know, the junior guy, just doing what he's told and being terrified and just trying.
He does nervous incredibly well.
Yes.
Tricky, who plays... Well, he's credited as right arm, who's sort of the henchman of Zorg. Yeah. Who's quite a famous sort of English hip hop artist. Mm-hmm. Did some incredible albums. And if you've never heard Tricky, check him out. Incredible. He's not a great actor, but he's incredible musician.
There are quite a few people in here that are not great actors that I think were cast for their look.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And then finally, almost finally, Samoa Lebesco, who plays Diva Plava Laguna, which I want to sort of touch on quite briefly before we try and sort of wrap this episode up. I didn't realize she was in I'm going to say this wrong. High Tension, basically. I was going to try and do the French pronunciation. She was the main character in High Tension, which is an incredible French extremity horror film, I suppose. If you've never seen it, check it out. It's incredible. A lot of people don't like it, but I fucking love it. It's great. But that performance, that whole musical piece, is just incredible. I think it's just so weird. This, it starts off this sort of operatic piece and then turns in this almost undulating sort of dance piece, I suppose.
Yeah, they give it a little bit of a hip-hoppy kind of.
Yeah, and it's, that whole sort of shootout at the end, just so much fun. The fight scene between Lilu and the Mangalores, that's the one.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. Another great point of this film is the editing. I think, you've got a lot of concurrent sort of storylines within the film, whether it's Lilu's journey and Corbin's sort of action pieces and things like that. There's a lot of to-ing and fro-ing between story arcs, but it just works so well. You've got a lot of dialogue crossing over in scenes as well, and it's just edited so crisply, I think.
Yeah, it feels like it was edited to some of the backing music in places.
Yeah.
I do want to credit you're crediting the physical performance for the diva. The singing was done by Inva Mula, who's an opera singer. I'm not sure, maybe her schedule didn't allow her to actually do the physical portrayal, because she's certainly, a lovely enough woman. And would have...
I think you've got to be of a certain temperament to maybe go into that kind of makeup, though, I suppose.
Perhaps. And she was still married to the director at the time. Mae Wen was still, Mrs. Besson, so to speak, at that time that they shot it.
But then you get, we lead to this sort of conclusion that love conquers all at the end. Which is, it's a nice sentiment.
Yeah.
It's a nice sentiment.
Yes.
I think it works really well with the film as a whole.
Yeah. It really underscores how wild the time compression is in this movie. Like, everything happens in 3 days.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
It's like he met her, yesterday. What is going on?
So that's all some people need, though. Those lucky people that find it in 3 days. Incredible.
He's been looking for that one perfect woman.
Well, she's supreme being. But I need to mention this because we sort of touched on it with Leon, and that moment Leon comes out of the dark with the knife to the throat, and it takes you into that scene. And this, the conclusion of this film, they get the stones, they put them in position, nothing happens. Yeah. And they have to figure out how to get these stones working before they even, deal with Lilu and getting her to do her stuff. And they figure out that, there's the 4 elements, so earth, wind, water, fire. And there's this incredible scene where wind blows and he realizes that, blowing onto the stone, it opens it up. Cornelius uses some sweat from his brow to mimic the water, and David uses the earth from the pyramid, basically. And then Ruby Rod is just left with fire, and he's got no, as he says, I've got no fire. And they have one match to basically get this thing kickstarted. They have one match between the 4 of them. And there's this incredible moment. And still, this must be at least 20-something time that I've watched this film. And at that moment, I still hold my breath.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mark of a film that draws you in, is that it can instill that kind of reaction in you, that you are there in the story, that you're there in the moment, and you will physically react as the characters are reacting. And there's this brilliant moment where they light the single match and there's a flicker.
Mm-hmm.
The flame flickers and everybody's
yeah.
the intake of breath, and you're there with it. For me, I I'm there in that moment, and I am rooting for them all. And they obviously sort of do it, and then Corbin sort of teaches Lulu about the brilliant things that are in the world. And then there are many, many, many brilliant things in this world. And when you find love, it is one of those things that makes you feel great.
The fifth element is love.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to be super dismissive of it. I mean, like, oh, the fifth element is love. But that's a key point in Interstellar, which I love. And I forget why it comes up. But they're having this discussion, and what's her name's character says, we love people who have died. Where's the social utility in that?
Yeah.
And it's underscoring that it's an important thing, at least to the human race. It's an important part of being human. It's an important aspect of our lives. And so, yes, I can see why that would be part of it.
But then I think it's almost Lulu has seen the worst that the world has to offer, whether that's just a quick sort of Wikipedia search about war and destruction on this planet. I think it's an important thing that sort of entity sees that there is good stuff as well, and that, it's maybe...
Well, I mean, there's microwave chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
She has like 6 bowls of that.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Chicken. But, like I said at the start, it's a very simple story.
Yes.
And what this film has is a whole lot of heart, as well as great sets, great costumes, great editing.
Yeah, the visuals are amazing.
Great visuals, yeah. It has a lot of things in spades, and I think it does have a lot of heart in spades as well. Very simple story, very, easy to just get lost in. And for me, I think that's something that's not very easy to get in film. And I'll tell you something else it has. An X-Files connection.
How did I guess?
This is an easy one, though. You should know this. You're a big fan of the first 5 seasons of X-Files.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I didn't think there was one for this one, and then literally within 10 minutes of the start of this film, I was like, "Oh my god, this is one of the easiest ones."
No.
So we have Mr. John Neville, Baron Munchausen himself, who plays the general at the start, who fires the warheads into the ultimate evil.
Right, and he's the well-manicured man?
Well-manicured man, yes, from seasons 2 to 5, I think, if I remember rightly. Maybe 6. No, the movie. He meets his demise in Fight the Future. But yeah, quite a big part of the X-Files canon, really. The well-manicured man, part of the evil alien conspiracy syndicate. And a big part of the series, yeah. So we have that. But that's, we've waxed lyrical for nearly 2 hours on this one. But it's a tough one for me. I will admit this is a tough one because I think Leon is a very good film, a very important piece of cinema history, for sure. But for me, I think what tips The Fifth Element is that it didn't feel its runtime. which is quite an important thing for me. You know, I still, with Leon, I think it loses me a little bit in the middle. Certainly with the extended edition, I think it doesn't need that extra bit of time. It doesn't need it at all. And I think there's still probably 5 to 10 minutes that could be shaved from the theatrical cut without losing anything. But it's so powerful and it's so important. I think it raises a lot of important questions, Leon, as a film as a whole, and it sort of creates quite an interesting dynamic of a relationship between two people. But at the end of the day, The Fifth Element doesn't feel like it's runtime, and it's just a whole heap of fun, and it looks incredible.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. Can't argue with either of those things. So
I think it's a tough one. I think, you know, when we go to the polls, I would estimate that Leon's probably going to take the victory.
yeah, it's just they're so different. They're so tonally different. They're entirely different genres. It's, you know, apples to oranges.
They are, but I think you can, you know, I like you, I've not seen the whole of Luc Besson's filmography, but I would say these are quite intrinsically Luc Besson films from what I have seen.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I've seen, he's a big believer in the power of love, overcoming even the wildest circumstances. I'm glad, for the sake of my choice of film, that it's different kinds of love are okay. You know, platonic love, like a mentor kind of love for their protege kind of thing. You know, I'm glad that he's a proponent of different varieties of love. So still, you got to wind up with the Fifth Element. You got to have the big kiss at the end.
Yeah, you don't like a big kiss at the end. Got to be hallmark of cinema, big kiss at the end. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Nicole, for joining me on this one. It's been a very interesting discussion, for sure. And if you want to just let people know how they can maybe get in touch with you, where they can follow you and find some of the other work outside of Movie Jewel.
You can follow me on Letterboxd at Nicole_Davis. I don't tweet very often.
You went back on for a little bit.
I don't X very often. So, but you can look for, you know, my Movie Duel appearances. You can look for appearances on my previous podcasts, Movie Go Round and Geek Cinema Society. And yeah, just, you know, hanging around the internet in general.
That doesn't sound sinister at all.
No. Mm-mm. Nothing to see here.
Fantastic. Okay, well, obviously you can head on over to X and vote in the poll and let us know what you think of our choices and which one you agree with. And also over on Spotify, cast your vote there, or by any means through social media or email, which you will have heard at the start of the episode. And it just leaves me to say goodbye. And for Nicole to say,
sounds like a freak of nature to me. Yeah, can't wait to meet him.